Hey guys, so today I put an invitation out on the chess.com forum for beginners to see if anyone wanted help with any games, analysing games maybe, and someone's popped up King's Bishop 23. It's a player from South Africa, rated just under 500, and I thought I'd check out this game which they lost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through the game. Their opponent was Selic 103, rated 533. Okay, so we're talking about pretty solid beginner ratings. But I think this game should probably really demonstrate how you can avoid the typical mistakes that people make around that 500 rating point mark, so that you can climb towards 1000 and beyond, which is the whole point of Chess Bootcamp. Okay, so let's start. White starts with e4, and black responds with e6. This is the French defense. This is something I've been playing myself quite a lot recently. Knight to c3, knight to f6, knight to f3, and then bishop to e7. So this looks pretty solid. So black is now ready to castle, has developed a couple of pieces. It's quite a restrained position so far. Now white decides to push the e-pawn. It's unless you have to move a pawn twice early on, or even a piece twice, it's generally a better use of your move to continue to develop. So in this position, if I was white, I'd be looking at bringing out this bishop to d3, c4 perhaps. Probably not pushing a pawn for a second time. I mean, I guess the idea is that it harasses the knight and makes black have to use a move to move the knight. So available squares. This is also available, d5. So black could have considered moving to d5, but then if knight takes, black would have had to recapture with one of the central pawns, and that's not necessarily such a bad thing. Also, considering that this pawn now on e5 is quite isolated in the middle of the board, so I think white should be thinking about playing d4 at some point soon. So that would be a move to consider. Black actually moved the knight back, which now prevents their king from being able to castle for the time being. So I think I'd have probably pushed the knight up the board and offered the exchange. White now plays d4, defending this advanced pawn on e5, which is a sensible move. White is now looking pretty good. It really looks like black has lost a couple of turns, which they have, in fact, having moved the knight out to f6 and then straight back again to its home square. Black now plays d5. This is a common move in the French defense. It's very often your second move in the French defense. This does offer the possibility of an en passant capture, but white declines that and develops their dark squared bishop to e3, where it's helping to reinforce the rearmost pawn on d4. This seems to be a fairly quiet move to me. Pawn to a6. I mean, it's covering the b5 square, so it's stopping this knight from coming in, which is not really a threat, and also stopping the light square bishop from coming in there. But if you think about it, let's say light square bishop comes in, all black has to do is to push the c-pawn, and then that will kick the bishop away again. So I mean, this is a defensive prophylactic move, but I don't think it was quite necessary at that point. Remember, look, 1, 2, 3 minor pieces still undeveloped. The king still can't castle. We need to be thinking about development in the beginning of the game. Control of the center, get your pieces out, and castle your king, right? This move does none of those things. Now white develops a light squared bishop, sensible move to d3. It's looking down here at the h7 square, so that if white ever castles kingside, then that square could become a vulnerability and could be a target. Now black develops a bishop. White pushes the queen to d2, possibly preparing to castle queenside. Now black develops a knight. So black's still behind in development. White is only one move away. All white has to do is castle to have completed development. Black is still on the back foot because of that wasted time with the knight. Now, white now comes in with a threat. This bishop here, so at this point in time, this is when I would definitely advise stopping and waiting. Right, this is a 10-minute game. Generally, I would probably advise anyone under 1,000 simply not to play 10 minutes or any shorter than that. The general rule, I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, the general rule is play a time control that allows you, gives you time to look at the whole board, consider every possible move, and decide with confidence that the move that you've selected is the best one that you can find, right? So even if you talk to yourself, talk it through. I find I play chess better when I'm talking to myself. When I'm talking about what my opponent's plan is, about what my ideas are, what my candidate moves are, and what their strengths and weaknesses of each might be, you know. So this is a critical point now. This is where, you know, an engagement has begun. So the bishop's defended by two pieces, defended by the queen and by the knight. So black can't capture because if bishop takes, knight takes. Well, I mean, black could capture. I suppose it's got two attackers, two defenders. So takes, that would just be a simple exchange. The queen can't then recapture. I think something that lower rated players very often do, and a lot higher than this level as well, is that when there is a potential conflict, when there is some tension on the board, you kind of feel like you need to resolve it immediately. Okay, it's like, oh, that bishop could take my bishop, or I could take that bishop, so one of these things must happen. Well, it's not true. Not exactly true. The way that I would approach this situation is think about it like this. Okay, one candidate move is bishop takes bishop, right? If bishop takes bishop, then white could recapture with the queen, offering an exchange of queens, or white could recapture with the knight. So let's imagine that bishop's off the board, that bishop's off the board, and that knight is there. Okay, what you need to do is you need to practice visualizing what the board will be like after that series of moves, right? And say, okay, is that potential future board better for me than what we have now, right? And then you take the next candidate move and say, okay, well, what if I take and the knight takes? I've got a knight here. The knight can't capture that, and I could kick it away quite easily with one of these moves. F6 is actually not a bad move in the French defense like this. It's quite a standard break. So if you've castled kingside and you've got your rook already on f8, then f6 is a handy move, because if you capture, then it can or get captured, it can open up the f file for your rook, which is pretty cool. So what would I do in this situation? Let's think it through. And again, one option is always do nothing. So you could, for example, play h6 and put the question to the bishop. Now, if bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, happy days. I think that's all right, because what you've done is you've moved your queen off the back rank, you've vacated the d8 square, which now gives you the option of castling queenside. That's not a bad thing, particularly when this knight's natural square has been taken away by this advanced e5 pawn. Okay, so I would be thinking, actually, I'm half tempted just to let my opponent do what they want, because this isn't a serious threat. Yes, there's tension. Yes, there's the possibility of exchanges, but is that a bad thing? Do I have to react to this now? And this is not a forcing move. Black doesn't have to react. So let's see what black played. h6. I think that's a very decent move. White now retreats the bishop to h4, keeping this pin, I guess, on the dark squared bishop. And now you would want to do the same thing. Okay, if I capture, and now that there's no option of the queen recapturing, it can only be the knight. Right, so look at this now. Bishop takes. It's only defended once, it's attacked actually twice, right? So bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, and you've won yourself a piece. Black didn't see that, okay? So black instead pushes f6, which is not a bad move. But one of the things the reason why we say take your time, play long enough time controls is, in any situation like this, you should always be, and like master players will do this incredibly rapidly. You count the attackers, you count the defenders. If you've got more attackers than there are defenders, you can go ahead and capture. The same number, probably not. Okay, but so here, black has missed an opportunity to go a full minor piece up. Okay, instead plays f6. White now plays g4, which is a peculiar move. I guess there's now no option of castling kingside. This would really expose the king. I don't really know what the idea of that move is. Black captures on e5. That's a handy move. White recaptures. Okay. Now just looking at this pawn, we've got one attacker, one defender. So that exchange would not favour black. So we're not going to think about that. But we have this option. Takes, takes, queen takes. And black spots it, okay? Not straight away, and then queen takes. Brilliant. Okay, so black is now up a whole minor piece. Nearly 8 minutes on the clock for both players. Now what you need to think about doing is I say this all the time. The answer is always slow down. Right? It doesn't really matter what the question is. The answer is nearly always slow down. Okay. Black is now up a significant amount of material, a whole minor piece. Black has an extra knight to white. So what you need to do when you are up in material like this is consolidate, okay? Make sure that your king is safe, and then set out ideally to prompt or force exchanges. Because if you can get to the end game when the queens are off the board, or the other pieces are off the board, and you've got this extra minor piece, that should almost guarantee a victory. Okay, now let's see what black does. Okay, white castles, very good move. If I were black now, I would do the exact same thing. I would be castling queenside, without a doubt. Right, this is time to sit back and capitalize on your advantage and just grind away at your opponent. Okay, knight to e7 is not a bad move. I mean, it means these knights are connected, so they're defending each other. That is a solid kind of situation. I also noticed now that the pawn on e5 was actually hanging, so an alternative move would have been knight takes e5. That also frees up this diagonal for the bishop. White plays rook h to g1, protecting the g pawn but leaving the h pawn now hanging. And black makes an unusual move here, castling kingside. There's a lot of empty spaces, empty squares around this kingside, and there's potential. And he's moved the king. Black's moved the king right into the path of this rook. Much safer square would be c8, where we've got minor pieces and pawns around in protection. White plays rook d to f1. This makes perfect sense. Lining up these rooks. This is now on a semi-open file. It's over there around the king. Black grabs the spare pawn, the loose pawn on h2. Makes a lot of sense. White now plays f4, which exposes the queen. Right? Now, when you're a minor piece up, exchanges are in your favour. You should be looking for exchanges. In this situation, I would almost certainly be exchanging queens. Let's see what black chooses to do. Black moves the queen back to h4. Rook comes along, grabs another pawn. Okay, this is now happy days for black. Black is now a minor piece and 2 pawns up in material. Okay, but of course none of that matters if you get checkmated. Bishop comes back to harass the queen further. Queen goes to f5. Rook comes out. It's defended by the bishop, so the queen has to move again. Queen goes to g6. Then queen to d3. Again, I would be exchanging queens at this point. When you're that far ahead of material. Instead, black pushes pawn to d4. Okay. White moves the knight to e4. It's not a bad square for the knight, but also notice that white has now voluntarily pinned their own knight. But it seems like black isn't keen to exchange queens anyway, so that's not a massive issue. Black now has a poke at the white queen, and knight comes in with check. Okay. Now this isn't. Yeah, this is something we should have seen actually. So with this move, this is a better move than it seemed at first, but in fact we've got pawn takes, haven't we? So this is a fork with check, but we've got g takes, and indeed black does the right thing, goes ahead. Black is now 8 material points in front. Okay, this is time to consolidate. White snatches a pawn. What I'd be thinking about now, this knight is on probably knight back to g6, kick the queen. Black decides to capture on a2 with check. King moves back. Now where's the knight going to go? What's the knight got in terms of safety? So sometimes the best form of defense is attack, and so black does just that, grabs a pawn, kicks the queen. But look, okay, so this is actually a fork. So white is attacking 2 pieces right there. So that's a piece down, but it doesn't matter. Black is still in front, a minor piece and 3 pawns. Now, okay, scan the board. What's undefended? Okay, that's on pre, which means it can be taken on the next move. So one thing you should be thinking about is, knight to c3, threaten to grab the bishop, and if the bishop falls, that bishop's the only defender of that rook. That would be one good move. But also, this knight is on pre also. So, what would I want to be thinking about? So here, one option would be maybe rook to e8 to defend the knight. Can I move that knight with an attack? Maybe knight to here. I'm not sure. But it's not a good situation to have 2 pieces on pre at the same time. And black plays queen to e4, which I think is an unusual move. Yes, it's attacking the bishop, but it's not doing anything to defend these other knights, so the king takes one of those pieces. What you could do now, remember this knight is still on pre, still a whole 3 pawns up at this point. Okay, 3 pawns up is a good place to be. If I were playing this, I'd be thinking about queen d5 with check, and basically forcing the white queen to exchange. So queen takes, knight takes, you've got knight in the middle of the board, get rid of this double pawn, and he should be good there in the endgame. Black plays rook a to d8, but that is neglecting the fact that this knight is still on pre, and white goes ahead and captures the knight. Now we've gone from a situation where black was a minor piece in front, white is now a minor piece in front. Material is technically equal because black has 3 extra pawns. And I'm worried about this king over this side of the board. There's 2 minutes on the clock left for black. That king is worrisome. So at this point in time, I'd be thinking about queen check. That would force king b1. Another option would be rook takes f4. Maybe try and exchange off the rooks. But let's see how the game unfolds. It's only a few more. So black here grabs a pawn. At this point in the game, when it's such a sharp position, right? You've got these major pieces here, a queen and two rooks, and a very exposed king. Okay, I think grabbing pawns now is not the way to win the game. What you want to be doing is putting huge pressure on your opponent. Okay, white comes in with check. Now what can black do? Can play queen to g6, which is futile. Or there's that move, king to h8, rook takes, and the only move there is to put the queen in the way, queen gets captured, right? So what black has done in this game is basically lost a decent advantage, and I think that was the pivotal point in the game, where they realised that that they had an attacking majority on that piece. When you go that piece up, batten down the hatches. First of all, king safety, and I think castling to the king side was a serious mistake in this game. So it's about understanding the flow of the game, understanding what's important next, and doing what you need to do to win. So black should have, I think, won this game with ease, I would say. But let's go back to before black castled. Okay. Okay. This, I think, is one of the critical moments of the game. I think castling queenside is a much better option. White has just castled queenside. I would castle queenside. Get these pieces around your king. Protect the king. Keep the king safe first of all, because if your king falls, you lose the game. Doesn't matter how far ahead you think you might be, you've got to protect your king. That's why we say in Chess Bootcamp, number one is king safety, right? Every time. So when you're ahead in material like this, you have to prioritize king safety. I mean, well, king safety always comes first anyway, but this is what I would have done. Castle queenside there, get this knight out, get this rook into the game, and you should have been able to proceed. There's a pawn on pre. Yeah, definitely a winnable position for black, but you have to develop your instincts for saying, okay, what is the story of the game so far? What is the board telling me? Right? You're in front, put safety first, okay, look after that king, and then strike out. But castling this side, as it turned out, clearly a huge error. Okay, so I hope that's been useful for you. Any other games where you think, how could I have won that? What should I have done? Just let me know. You can put a message in for beginners. You can send me a message on chess.com, even YouTube comments. So yeah, if it's useful for you, share your games, because I love doing this stuff. I love to help. I want to help you to improve your chess, get beyond the 1000 and beyond. Okay, see you later.